schedule, is when we started this project, which is part of a larger project about exploring what matters most to high net worth individuals and ultra high net worth individuals. And in our conversation with Mrs. Alexander and also Mrs. de la Cloche, Macaron de la Cloche, we immediately thought the best thing for us to do is talk to the people who talk to your clients, because it's very important for us that you feel comfortable with this process, because they are your clients, you have the relationship with them. So we want to ensure that you're absolutely comfortable and confident in our ability for us to speak on your behalf and find these things out. So I know there's been a break over Christmas, so if you would like us to just summarize really quick what this is all about, so you get a better, probably better appreciation of the project and what the aim and the objectives of the project is. Is that okay?
That would be great.
Okay. So Annalisa and I started out doing research together in the recent past, in the recent 2 years. For researchers, that is very recent, you know, unlike in a managerial environment. And we started out to look at what ultra high net worth individuals experience. And we started out with super yacht owners, and then we expanded our research in tailor-made art collectors, supercars, and private aviation. And now we have a project lined up with the private aviation that is concluded or will be concluded on Monday morning. So we hope to explore what drives their behavior, what drives ultra high net worth individuals. And with VistaChat together, we came up with the idea of what we call 100 voices. 100 voices means that we choose different partners from different contexts, which then will collaborate together to get a very good idea about what matters most to their client, but also what matters to the segment in general, which then helps you to either anticipate or change and amend strategies accordingly, or look in the future what's required, what are the trends, what's emerging, what's going to be important for them. So we cover a lot of industries. So the next one lined up are Knight Frank from real estate, Audemars Piguet in terms of watches, Lamborghini for car manufacturers, Christie's. So in terms of auction houses and art, did I forget somebody? Exclusive resorts,
Fedship,
Comfort Nicholson. So we all come together to figure out what is it that drives behavior. And Pernod Ricard were the one who immediately jumped on the opportunity, and Alexander, because he immediately could see that customer experience is not only important, but it's important for companies like you, which are now in the process of shifting from a B2B relationship to a more B2C and direct to consumer model. And that's a hard transition, to say the least. And I have this conversation with my clients all the time, because at the end of the day, you are outsourcing the experience, which is the worst thing they can do. In particular, when you look at your main channels, which are trade and retail, they're not just representing your brands, they're representing many other brands. So often you also find abuse of brands, meaning that you use a particular brand to lure a segment and then sell them another product where you get a higher margin or other benefits of it. So we believe that Alexander has the right idea to go for and explore how this direct-to-consumer model will work, what kind of experience will work. So they highlighted 3 markets to us that we should be looking at, which is Germany, Japan, and 4 actually, China, of course, 2, which is still coming, and the United States. And what we are trying to establish there is to find out how the current experiences with the Pernod Ricard cognac or champagne brand is in general. And the way we do that is by having a conversation with them. The benefit immediately for your respondents is that it's anonymous, it's confidential, and it's done by researchers from a university, not a market research company. And we are trained in psychological tools that will help them to flow a conversation. So it's not an interview, it's not a structured questionnaire, it's an open conversation. All we are asking is, when was the first time you start thinking about Pernod Ricard? When was the first interaction? When did you purchase the first time? What was the post-purchase experience? What is your feeling of improvement and why? Always quantifying and qualifying their statements and their impact. So at the end of the day, we always ask people for 15 to 30 minutes. But to be quite honest, even when people tell us they only have 30 minutes, after an hour we tell them, don't you have to go to another appointment? They're like, oh, this is so therapeutical.
Yeah.
It's like being on the couch. But because it's important. The only importance is the person we talk to, and they can freely share all their experiences, and that works very well. And then we take these conversations and find out in a non-intrusive way by putting them together, look for emerging themes. So what do they have in common? What are outliers? And then it goes to a more granular kind of analysis, which then could highlight, for example, are there different perception of the experience with Japan or a particular person, or is cognac different from champagne, etc., etc. But the first thing we are doing is, in this first stage, is to find out what really is the experience with people like you, with the gatekeepers, so to say, the one that are representing the brand at the end of the day, because it's very different from a direct interaction than an intermediary interaction. And we just want to find out what works very well and also where there's room for improvement. Because one thing I'm doing this now for 15 plus years with clients and research like this, one thing we always find out is it's human nature. If I ask you, when was the last time you had a great experience? It might take some time to recall it. And it's also very hard to describe it, a great experience. Why was it great? Because there are so many things that went into it that made it great. And then the subsequent question is, with how many people did you share the great experiences? And most people say, well, with the one very close to me, friends, family. And then the subsequent question is, how do you share it? And it's conversational. So I tell Annalisa, this restaurant is really great, you should go there. End of story. Now on the opposite side, we have negative customer experiences. Everyone can recollect them very easily. Why? Because they have a higher impact on our well-being and our memory system. The second thing is, of course, not only we recollect them, we can tell you very precisely why they're being perceived as negative, up to the minute details of it. And the third part is, of course, with how many do we share it? We share it normally on social media or other points where it's accessible theoretically for everyone with an internet connection 24/7 around the globe, and as long as we live, and even longer. So the impact of negative word of mouth is incredibly higher than the positive word of mouth. So customer experience management is often not about delighting customers, which sets the stage just for dissatisfaction, but fix what's broken, for lack of better word. And we just highlight where are the challenges and where you can turn it into opportunities. And therefore, we want to ask you, if you're kind enough, which you already did, to introduce us to a few selected of your clients that you say they will be open-minded to that. And the process that we normally have with you and your colleague is, we're going to send you an email which will be the subsequent email we will send to the people that you selected upon their approval. Because in this email, you can see a little bit more about how we address them and how it will look like. Then we ask you, be kind enough to contact them. Just saying, okay, here's this piece of research by the International University of Monaco. Monaco, the brand always goes very well, so, especially with this segment.
Yeah.
So if they then say, oh yeah, I would like to talk to them and share my experience with them, we will say, thank you so very much. You will send an email with us in CC introducing the person, and then we will send this email that we're going to forward to you and ask them for when would you like to talk, which kind of medium do you appreciate, is there a language besides English you would rather talk to, etc., etc. And then in all these conversations that we will have with your clients, we will always have you in BCC. So you know what's going on when we talk to them, what the outcome was, etc. Because we want to be as transparent as possible. This is what research is all about, transparency, So
Very
that's
clear.
about it.
No, that's very helpful. I assumed some of it, but certainly wasn't clear on all the aspects of the initiative. So thank you for taking me through that. I think it's worth level setting with you guys in terms of where we are in the U.S. with respect to our engagement evolution with high net worth individuals, and which we're calling as the prestige segment, and in terms of a classification. So traditionally, where we've had the operation or focus for the last 8 years within the U.S., but we have been primarily a B2B commercial model. Commercial focus. The DTC piece or B2C is fairly new. Although we know it's been high on the radar to action for some time, we haven't had the opportunity to marshal the resources or the strategic direction for the organization behind it until now. So we've got, hence why I kind of probably came into this conversation a little bit late relevant to my peers. But when Alexander informed me about it in December, certainly I was very much excited to be a part of it any way we can. To your point, certainly I shared one of the contacts from an individual that I'm close with out of the California market, who's, as you can see from his background, is very diverse in terms of experience and financial means. That being said, now that I have a better understanding of what you're trying to do, there are certainly other individuals who sort of live within our prestige reach and range as it exists today, but more so through probably a commercial lens. So whether it's, and I'm not sure if you're familiar with some of the properties or names, but David Grutman, who's an owner-operator of some of the largest hospitality properties in Miami. I'm thinking about who's doing well even today during the insanity of the pandemic, who has the direct access to affluent individuals, celebrities, but more so the individuals who like to go out and dine and buy in a hospitality setting, because that's been our go-to primary point of contact with engaging their affluent targets. So what we've recognized over time is that because we didn't have the D2C model in place, we basically set our sights on the same targeted cohort, but going through our commercial partners to get there. And you spoke about it eloquently in the very beginning of this call, elaborating on the challenges of that, right? So ultimately, we're very reliant, dependent on these individuals to engage them with our brands, but we lose control over that experience once that individual basically has the experience within their establishments. So fast forwarding to where we want to go and what we're architecting now is that D2C model where we'll have private client managers put in place across the US and key markets where they'll cultivate those one-to-one relationships. So we're not there yet, although we have been targeting the same clientele, just not directly up until now. So I thought it's important for you guys to understand that in terms of where we are and what we can, and the value we can add, I guess, to the work stream as it exists today. Does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Okay.
Because
But
we
I
know
think
it's relatively new, or it's always been on the agenda, but there was never really, how should I say, a driving force behind it that says, okay, let's do it now, you know.
yeah, we it's great to finally get the green light on our side, because we know what the potential is, especially with what we've experienced over the last 9 months via pandemic with entertaining in and around the home. Obviously, I know that you're probably much closer to it than most in terms of the changing behaviors around, this affluent class, how they want to express their means, safety, security, all the above. So I think there's a lot to unpack there. There's no question. I'm sure you do a great job doing that. But any way we can support you, if it's just a matter of getting the right clientele that we have access to today in terms of parting the study, happy to do that. If there are any pointed questions that I can help answer, always happy to do that. So you tell me what would be the best step moving forward.
Best step moving forward?
I have just one question. What are the activities or activations you do on the market to connect with these VIP clients, let's say?
So the first step is, we had two different marketing models or engagement models. It was primarily, when I say B2B, it has multiple terms. The first piece is commercial lens. So we've identified across the country, across 8 key markets, where the top iconic and leading hospitality venues exist. And then our mission was to win the hearts and minds of the owners, operators, decision makers within those properties, to make sure that our portfolio is well represented, so that when these individuals who enjoy hospitality want to go out and dine and vibe, go to a club, go to a concert, have an experience, that they would have an opportunity to experience our brands. And then we work with those accounts to create bespoke offerings within those settings that would be endearing to the individuals that would use them. So again, losing a bit of control in the last points of interaction, but still that was the primary point where we could position our brands to have the best chance of being purchased and experienced, and hopefully develop affinity and advocacy. If we can go one step further, we did a lot of work around events, activations around key temple moments. So Art Basel is a great example, every year activating with our brand teams to make sure that we've got from large scale events to more intimate affairs, with partnering with, again, partners, retail partners, art houses, et cetera, within those spaces, or we could attract that clientele. So it's always been a more so of a piggyback, if you will, combination of experience, instead of us as an organization owning it from the outright. So meaning that if we know that, and Art Basel is a great example pre-COVID, because we've got. And are you both familiar with the art festival, Art Basel in Miami? Have you heard of it?
Yeah.
So you've got a lot of, obviously the art shows itself, but there's a lot of one-off opportunities to host, entertain, whether we're partnering with some of the yachts partnerships down in Miami, or again, you've got a lot of firms that come down and use that as a landscape to host and entertain their clientele. So it was just a matter of figuring out which partnerships that we'd want to support. And of course, everybody wants to have alcohol included in part of their experience, which gives us the access or the opportunity to engage. But again, I think the big missing link for us is always we've been a part of somebody else's experience, somebody else's journey, to engage the same clientele that we're targeting, versus us controlling it from A to Z, which is something that we're working towards delivering now.
So do you have direct CRM activities, for example?
So that's the missing link. We've never formalized the CRM piece so that we can maintain an ongoing conversation with these individuals to cultivate a long-term relationship. And that's really where it's funny, even with our commercial partnerships, we've done a great job commercializing or monetizing these relationships with respect to the properties, but not the individuals. So the value for the organization has always been, what are the cases and net sales that come out of that activation and experience, versus looking at the long-term investment of what is the relationship with the individual that gets the reorder, and then the network effect within that community that becomes a bigger size of prize. So that's what we recognize now as a long-term opportunity for the organization. And you've got the data to support it. Looks with, again, just looking at the trends that have occurred over the last 8 months of entertaining and around the home, where we know that every brand or the premium side of the portfolios from champagne, tequila, et cetera, continue to spike when even in knowing that they're not, the off-premise experiences are not available. So people are certainly continuing they drinking less, but drinking better. So with respect to our portfolio and our opportunities, there is the size of prize. So we've got to, and certainly we've done the data, the research, the analytics to understand what we believe is out there. Now we've just got to figure out the methodology and the framework to unlock that.
Makes sense.
And then where a direct consumer can buy your limited editions or specific bottles, I don't know. How do you bring these specific products to these directly to these people?
So the way it works today is that ultimately where there's no direct line of sight to unlock that direct selling proposition. We sell, if we've got a great example is our Winchester collection. So the Glenlivet sells 50-year-old single malt Scotch for a retail selling price is about $25,000 a bottle. We've got an allocation of that comes around the world. We've got 20 bottles that come into the US. As it stands today, those are parceled out by division, sold to either a niche retail account or a chain store, and then using their CRM to tap into who's got the propensity to buy. It's a broken model. The reality is we should have our own CRM where these resources come directly into our private client manager cohort internally at Pernod, and we action those before they even land into market, saying here's what I've got, and because you've already know who you've got that relationship and that network cultivated, and it's an easy sell. I mean, that's the vision, but we haven't actioned that yet. We haven't unlocked that network, and we will, because that's where we're finally marshaling the resources around. So I think when you look at the markets, as you mentioned, Germany, Japan, China, US, China is one of the few that we've got across the organization globally that has this dedication of private client manager sell. And again, different legalities, different framework from a geography region perspective. We have some challenges with our US framework, but when you're dealing with a consumer versus a customer who's tied to a license, there's a lot more flexibility and leeway. We just have to marshal the dedication to serve as the means to unlock that.
Okay.
That makes sense?
Yeah, it's a completely different model because all of a sudden you also will deal with an entirely different quantity, heterogeneity, etc., etc. It becomes, in a way, more complex, but also more exciting and more rewarding in the long term.
The more rewarding in the long term, but the cash cow is still so the single, the 75, the 1.5 liters, and talking about champagne, and so this is where most of the money is coming from for the moment.
Right, and that's where the margin is. And I think one other point to call out, just to clarify, I think you already got it, is that we'll never, the legal framework as it exists today in the US, we'll never be able to directly sell to these individuals. We'll still have to sell through a retail partner, a digital fourth tier platform, all sourced through our 3-tier network, which is going through the distributor to the retailer. But I don't see that as an issue. I think ultimately, as long as we have the ownership over the relationships that can dictate where the product goes, regardless of what state, what process, the margin's still there. I mean, I think.
Or you have your own distribution. You know, they will do the Canadian principle, just buy a chain of liquor stores, and there you go.
But actually, as MDB with LVMH, or Diageo with the LVMH, so they own their own one, so they keep under control till the last mile.
Right. Yeah, and I think. Who knows what's going to change and flex in the future relative to what's coming out of the pandemic. There's always been a lot of flex discussions now, and that may be subject to change. But I think the immediate value impact for us in the U.S. perspective is that if we can substantiate cultivating this network and show that we have a direct line of sight to processing these sales through to these individuals, it only enhances our opportunity to increase share of product being produced, the casks, the large formats, the allocation that come in, which obviously, again, increases the overall net sales contribution for the U.S. So That's the immediate anyway.
Okay. I have just a side question. Do you know Laura Nicole Newman? No.
Can you say that last name again?
Laura Newman.
I know the name sounds really familiar. Why would I know Laura Newman?
Because she works for Pernod in US, and she's one of my former students.
Laura Newman works for Pernod in the US?
For Chivas and Valentine's in the whiskey division.
Ah, okay. It definitely rings a bell. It did not. Oh, that's fantastic.
Yeah.
I'm a little removed from the direct brand teams.
Okay.
Personnel, unfortunately.
Just a curiosity. I'm so sorry, but you know, it just.
No, I appreciate you asking. I'm happy to pass on a message or hello if you like.
Okay, and I will inform her that we're working together.
Awesome.
Good. So, do you have any additional question for us, Steve? That may.
I think the process is clear. What's the timeline of cutoff for the surveys or the interviews to be done?
The earlier, the better. But I mean,
okay.
It's exploratory research. We would envision.
It doesn't expire, you know.
It doesn't expire, you know. It's. But if we conduct all interviews by the end of February, I'm sure Alex will be delighted. Yeah.
Okay, end of Feb. So I'll action that today with some of the team to see if we can get some additional conversations flowing. I think it's really interesting. One of the things that's perplexed me for a while in terms of this process, and I hear everything you've described already, which is perfectly in sync with what my beliefs are in terms of good experiences, bad experiences, what resonates, the communication, how it works. But I'm also a big believer that there's these pivotal moments they're inflection points, if you will, in experience where they have much more value than other parts of the experiential journey.
Critical incidents. Yeah.
Yes.
Moments of truth or whatever you want to call them. Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And those are I don't know if that's part of the scope, but I'd love to have an insight on terms of if you're taking someone an HNWI or Ultra or Henry through an experience, whatever the framework is, and there's those key moments within of impact of transformation of aha. I know there can be other work or additional work done to I guess delayer that and get a spotlight on that. And I'll use an example that was brought to my attention recently. I was wearing a digital transformation workshop, and there was a member who attended who was running a luxury property down in South America. And they had done a deep dive in terms of their consumer base and understanding their journey and experiences and where they can improve. And what they found by doing a deep dive survey is that there was a moment upon arrival, a check-in, that resonated with the bulk of the interviews that said, hey, at that moment, there was one thing that really stood out to us that really became a dynamic kind of effect for the rest of the experience. And that's what they all spoke to. So they pivoted and shifted a lot of their direction resources around that initial arrival moment. And I thought that was really interesting in terms of, you think about a hotel stay and experience, and if it's 3, 5, 10 nights, all the things that could happen over that time period, but most people resonated back to that key arrival moment. Yeah. And I think that's very true for whether it's an experience at Art Basel or Aspen or Coachella or whatever it is that we're doing, or brand home experience. There's moments that it's recognizing someone on a birthday, an anniversary, whatever they are, that stand out much more than the everyday noise, white noise, right? So I don't know if that's something you guys are looking into or you're going to draw attention to, but personally, I'd love to understand more about what those are. And obviously, just reinforcing that here's what you need to do.
No, it is part of the scope. For example, we just finished, or we're in the process of finishing the private aviation piece. And there it was delightful to see that the things that people recalled had pretty much nothing to do with the service or the offering. It was something unplanned, non-supervised, non-orchestrated. It was when one person mentioned that a crew member saw her at the airport and greeted her and asked her about a personal relationship, how's it going? And that was the first thing she remembered, and she mentioned it 2 or 3 times, which is completely unplanned or what's looking for. Or somebody telling us that they said, we loved that the pilot told us, sorry guys, that won't happen. You know, that he was so strict, direct, and say, I don't care what pretty much everybody tells you in the company, we are not going to fly there. It's not going to happen. And they appreciated the honesty, but
Yeah.
there's nothing, it's not in a manual, it's not in a customer journey map, it's the, often it's the little things that matter, and people repeat and repeat the stories.
Yes.
They said the most important thing for me was, or another person,
the scratchbook
yeah,
for the kids.
recorded that the kids had scratchbooks. So the next time they came on board, she created her own scratchbook that they could share together. And they told us, I guess, during the conversation 3 or 4 times, the scratchbook, the scratchbook. We're like, okay.
So
You
there
know,
are
these,
most of the cases are little details.
yeah,
Yes.
and most of them, as always, are not related to processes.
No.
They're related to human interaction.
Yes.
It's never the process. It's never the quality management part that works well. It's how people deal with these little bottlenecks and going as, how should I say, as awful as it sounds, going the extra mile.
Yeah.
But that again then leads back to managerial implication, that when you hire people, you have to hire people with a certain skill set, who are high on empathy scores, who are high on protection scores, who are high on security scores, who are used to work odd hours and so on, or with difficult clients, rather than somebody who knows something about aviation or looks good. You know, no one cares how good the stewardess
Exactly.
flight attendant looks. They're like, no, I couldn't care less that you're beautiful. Fix it.
Fix it.
And
with
listen.
an empathetic
Yeah.
way, yes.
Yeah.
Oh, that's brilliant. And I'm thrilled to hear that, because that's, to me, that's where the real matter is. And if you don't mind, I'd love to share one more scenario with you. And
Sure.
it just bubbles with me all the time. So are you both familiar with the restaurant called 11 Madison Park in New York?
The
11 Madison Park. Have you heard of that at all?
No.
It's one of the few top Michelin rated restaurants in the city, and it's run by it was run by Will Guidara and Chef Daniel Hume, and they were astute enough to, recognizing their clientele, the average spend per person was around $400 per plate, and they always, it was very hard to get a reservation, all pre-COVID again, and they had 2 very unique roles on their roster, which were called dream makers. And the entire role of these individuals on their and this is a restaurant, was to survey the customer list, their guest list each night, and do the back work in terms of identifying, if they weren't sure who some people were, to understand their own private stories, whether it's Facebook, Instagram, needs, tap into their CRM, and then try to find unique ways to enhance those individual experiences during the dining occasion. So the dinner, best chef in the world, all, you know, the process, service, steps are all ironed out, but it's what you'd expect, right? So to your point, doing the thing, delivering something you wouldn't expect. So a great example was they had a family of 4 come in from out of the country who had never experienced winter before, and it was probably December, January in New York. And they saw that on one of their Instagram feeds or Facebooks, they wanted to experience sledding in the snow. So during the course of their dinner, the staff, the viewers, paused their dinner, and it was orchestrated with the back of the house and so forth, and took the family out across the street into Madison Square Park, where they had sleds set up, and they took the kids sledding around the park, and they brought them back in to finish their dinner, which of course, you know, it was all the rage in terms of the press and recognition and peer-to-peer support and all that. And I just think that, and that's kind of next level, but it's those moments, those recognitions where they can be managed, they can be engineered to a degree, right? But as long as you've got the right people with the EQ, the sincerity mindset, the security, the protection,
emotional intelligence.
Yes, the EQ, IQ balance, you got to have it to brainstorm that. And I thought that's next level. That's what we're trying to achieve in converting. And when you do that, you've got an advocate for life, whether it's for Bella Pak or, it doesn't matter. I think again, that's up here, but I think that's where we'd want to go when we talk about orchestrating it.
I couldn't agree more. But as scientists, we are always this horrible people, as we say, that we say, yeah, that's a good aim, but really, what decides that people will not choose you are the things that you do wrong first.
Of course.
Because they cannot appreciate this. Because even the funny thing is, the people with the scratchbook said, yeah, that was really delightful. However, then they let us down in the contract negotiations.
Yep.
So then you're like, well, this was marvelous, but
I think the standard, the experience has to be at the highest level, and that has to be a given, right? So that you've got to have that first for sure, and then you can
add on. Yes,
agreed.
In the end, what they mention as most important are other stuff. So you fix that, and then you add additional stuff.
This was great, but rather fix that first.
Yes, fair.
Because and we also know that from our super yacht owners. They have the same, they say, don't tell me that you're going to exceed my expectations when you don't even know what my expectations are and you don't meet them. It's
fair.
Because with this kind of, so you have to be balancing it. You cannot raise expectation that high that people will be disappointed.
Right.
Because, this could also backfire to 11 Madison Avenue, that everybody who comes in there then says, hey, didn't you read my Facebook? This is what I expected to do.
It's a very fair point.
Yeah.
It is the balance, right? So.
Yeah, exactly. You always need to be careful with that. Yeah.
Good call.
Okay.
Excellent. Thank you for sharing that.
Well, my pleasure.
So next step. So we will send you the sample of the letter we will share with your clients as soon as you will put them in contact with us, and then
in terms of contact,
wait for
the more the merrier, because we also know that even if people commit to the interview, because they're all very busy people, running their business or whatever it is, often it happens that 5 minutes before the call you get then a text message from the PA saying, sorry, you cannot make it, or whatsoever. Okay, but we are on a deadline too. We can, with private aviation, we just told 7 people that, I'm sorry, next time probably.
Even in yachting it happens.
Even in yachting that you just say, okay, next time around, this time it didn't happen. Yeah.
Another comment is that for the moment, the geographical standpoint is not relevant. So for the moment, what we'll analyze is the perception of your customers about champagne and whiskey, and cognac. I was thinking about the whiskey before, and cognac. But then, even in a second moment, we would like to analyze specifically your market, or Germany, or France, or whatever it is.
More granular.
This is something that can come later on.
Got it.
If you say, I really want to know what's ticking. Now I know. Now I got a complete understanding. But what's specific or more specific about ours? So we can also then dig deeper, because we are limited by the numbers of interviews that we have available globally. That was decided by Alex. So if you later on say, I would like you to talk to more people, get more information, then this will be possible too.
Or I would like to talk with prospect. That is a completely different perspective, for example. Or I would like to talk with my partners. Actually, there's a view about the role of the intermediaries, and actually how you can increase the loyalty of your intermediaries. That is another perspective in the intensive distribution model you have, for example. So there are different angles. So this kind of research cannot be generalized.
Got it.
So it is very important that we take a specific sample to reply to a specific question.
That makes sense.
Okay.
So from this lens, if I understand correctly, then it's really about the affluence, the means, the access. It's not about geographical location, where the money sourced from, whether it's Silicon Valley or celebrityism from music or talent. Okay, got it. So,
however, if you do have information that makes us possible to quantify them in a way, so certain demographics that you say that's a VIP client, this is very important or responsible, this is somebody who just came into it, or this is somebody who just has champagne. The more information you can give us, the easier it is then in the second step to base upon that, or already start with a sheet and say, Steve, it looks like the champagne people perceive the brand slightly different or want other experiences than, for example, the cognac or the whiskey people, you know?
Makes sense. Okay. And it is champagne and cognac as the two primary categories we're focusing on for this.
Yeah, that were the two given to us. Yeah.
Interesting. Obviously it makes sense from MMPJ standpoint, but cognac emerging, but a little less relevant in the US.
In the US, no.
Yeah.
But hey,
this is why I mentioned whiskey before.
Whiskey.
Fair enough.
Whiskey came to my mind and not cognac.
Yeah.
But voilà.
Well, that makes sense.
Yeah. Great. No, I've got a lot to go on here. So, and I will, grounding it in context, but that'll be for just the three of us.
Exactly.
With the, okay, so this is great. Yeah, if you don't mind, send me the letter and anything else that you want to send to that. I'm assuming that I'm going to take a good chunk of it and then share it on so it gives some context to what the individual will be talking about. And we'll action that very quickly for you.
And it's very nonchalant, as we say. It's very much, we just want to talk to you.
Yeah, I think that's great. Yeah. That's great. You know, we'll, like I said, I'll benchmark it at 30 minutes for the discussions. And if it goes longer,
30, yeah. And then if they go over, it's
perfect.
We always said 30 minutes because we know we can cover it in 25 minutes, but the tendency with high net worth individual and ultra high net worth individual is actually the contrary, that despite they having not a lot of time, they appreciate the time then even more, which is almost an oxymoron, because people, I only have 30 minutes. But once you start talking to them, they're like, oh yeah, oh, my wife is here too, she can talk about it. That's so often. And the wife comes in, and my children fly too, you know. And then, would you like to talk to them? We're like, okay.
They have several passions related to luxury. So as soon as you ask for something additional, so what do you think about yachting? What do you think about something that complements the offer? And then they enter into another complete world. You know, this is it.
Because one thing that's interesting and might be interesting to you, we will also then compare and contrast it, the same segment, with other experience they have with other providers, such as real estate, art collection, cars, and so on. So you also get a good feeling then looking at all of them. These are the things that occur everywhere, you know, so the things that are non-context specific, almost like the DNA of customer experience, meaning you need to have that. Then you go into more details of what your context requires, a little bit more of that, a little bit more of that. And also one thing that's interesting to know, it's dynamic. Yeah. So if you're a first-time buyer, you look for a different experience than a repeat buyer or than a regular buyer. Because at the beginning, it's new relationships, so it's very much trust building, peace of mind, holding your hand. But then when you go for the second one, you look for different things, delivery, how it comes together. But when you're regular, you look for different benefits. You say, okay, I'm regular now. What have you done for me lately, so to say? So it's a dynamic process, and that's why it's so hard to manage, so difficult to manage.
Yeah, it makes perfect sense. And it also parallels nicely the evolution of the journey of learning about brands. I mean, specifically alcohol brands, because ultimately, if you're talking about cognac or whiskey, you're not born into a palate that says, I love this stuff. Like you've got to acquire, and it's got to evolve, and it takes time to learn history and heritage, and ultimately, to your point, what does it mean? So if you're coming in it from new money and you're drinking champagne, it's probably from a badging mindset initially. It's like it's not about the affinity and the love story of the house, and you know it comes over
status, what it's less about.
100%. Yeah, exactly. Initially, and then you evolve, right? So and then that's where your whole experience changes. And I think that's what's really interesting about our class of goods. I mean, we're talking about something you're ingesting as well. So it's not like a car or a diamond or clothing or an artwork where you put it on the wall or hang it. You've got to physically put it into your body. So you have to, there's a trust piece, but also a desire and appetite to do that, right? In addition to showcasing what this means, there stands about me. And then you've got the moments of occasion, and that's going to influence the brands of choice. So there's a lot there. And I certainly understand the diamondism that
yeah, I remember we did a piece of, I did with colleagues a piece of research back in the days about when people come back home from vacation and buy expensive wine again, and they don't have the, and they don't, and they experience in a way it doesn't taste the same.
No.
And you tell them, no, it tastes exactly the same, but what's missing is the experience
Everything
around
else.
it. You know, the context. If the context is different, the experience with the product will be different.
Isn't that
and
amazing?
this is often hard to understand for brands, that they say, oh, we cannot say, oh, they all taste the same. I'm like, no, it's when the customer tastes it, in which context they taste it.
Yeah.
So that's why when you have tasting, you know, it needs to be an environment that enhances the experience, not just like spit it out and go on, you know.
100%. Yeah, I'd say I have to acknowledge that having a glass of rosé in Provence is a little bit different than having, you know, a glass of rosé in your local pizza shop in the corner, right? So very, very different.
Yeah,
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
Okay, so Steve, thank you so much for your valuable time and
my
your
pleasure. Thank
insights. So let's keep in touch, and then let's
Absolutely.
start working together.
Excellent.
Look forward to it. Thank
Should
you
be
very much, you guys.
exciting.
I'm excited. This is great subject matter. It's obviously what I focus on. So
Yeah, it's a sparkling.
Yeah.
Okay. You have a great day, Steve.
You
and
as
we
well.
send you an email later on today.
Perfect. Looking forward to it. Thanks
Take
again.
care.
Bye.
Have a great one.
Bye.
Bye-bye.